I began my work on the Art of Fugue in 2013, quite a few years ago. I was a conservatory student, and one of the courses I had to attend was harpsichord. I was a terrible harpsichord player, but I had the luck that my teacher was Sergio Vartolo that year, who is one of the leading experts on the Art of Fugue. And he made me start with two of the counterpoints, number 1 and number 4. And I liked this music. I knew it already, but I'd never thought about learning it myself. And actually playing it felt like an extremely deep experience, and one of those pieces that I can practice more and more on, and it never tired me. So in the next years, I kept studying all the other parts of this work in the background while I was doing other repertoire and concerts and competitions and all of that. And I always wanted at some point to be able to bring this work to the public. And now so many coincidences have happened. The Borletti Buitoni Trust Award has given me the possibility to develop a project on this work, and the coronavirus pandemic has given me time to fully dig into this core and go as deep as I am able to. And so this project was born, the Art of Fugue Explored, which is my attempt at making sense of this wonderful and mysterious work of music and bringing it to the audiences worldwide. So when thinking about how to bring this work to the public, of course, the core of my project will be live performances, because this is the most natural way to enjoy and communicate music, just playing it. But with a work of this kind, I thought also presenting it with the help of some information in the form of concert lectures will be important to establish more connection with the audience and also help them have a richer way of listening by knowing a little bit more of the background and the structure of this complicated piece. And besides that, the opportunities we have in 2020 with technology and communication means are almost boundless. So I started thinking about what could be done with these tools. And of course, I'm here now in Teldex studio in Berlin, where I just finished recording a CD, and I will also record a film performance of this work later on. But one part of the project that I am really looking forward to is a documentary series. And this came as an idea which formed slowly. The idea is to create a universal reflection on contemporary society and art and thought by using the Art of Fugue as somehow a map. This is one of those works of art that has roots reaching far back into the past, far behind Bach's time, and with branches going far into the future. And there are really opportunities to talk about it and the themes that it crosses transversally with intellectuals, artists, leading personalities of our time. And if you will follow this series, I hope you will learn about contemporary art, about philosophy, about sciences, about maths, while connecting it all with the history of one single masterpiece of music. This piece itself is not just a work of music, but rather a condensed attempt by Bach of solidifying his lifetime search for meaning in a single work. And I think this is what gave me the idea of using it as a base to talk to people who have made outstanding contributions to our society and shaped the way I personally think and enjoy art. The Art of Fugue is a work that was born in a very specific historical and cultural context. And to describe it, to give you a picture, Leipzig was a bustling intellectual city with a very open feud between the church, the Thomaskirche, where Bach was cantor, and the university. The Thomaskirche was one of the most conservative institutions in the whole of Europe, whereas the university where Leibniz had studied was an extremely progressive center for science, for philosophy. And Bach was somehow torn between these two cultural fields, because from one point of view, he was a man of deep and sincere faith and was the cantor of the church, but also his pupils were all foremost intellectuals of the scene of Leipzig, and he was he knew and frequented the social circles of the university. He was informed on the developments of science, of maths, of philosophy. He had a rich interest ranging from the esoteric mystical books like the Kabbalah or Catholic ones, but also the Book of Revelations, and at the same time interest in science, and in particular also in the philosophy of Leibniz. And the Art of Fugue is a work that seems to be born, like the other works that Bach composed in the final 10 years of his life, born from this mindset as an attempt to reconcile all of this. In 1738, one of Bach's pupils, Lorenz Christoph Mitzler, had founded in Leipzig the corresponding Society for the Musical Sciences. This was a society that Bach later became a member of, and whose mentality was to go deeper and deeper in the study of counterpoint. The members had to submit a composition every year that showed progresses, advancements in counterpoint technique. This was because counterpoint was viewed as the kind of musical writing style that could elevate the soul the most, that corresponded the most to the act of creation of God, to the order in the cosmos. The idea of taking basic elements of music, a melody, a theme, and permutating them, moving them around, using symmetry, using mathematical, almost geometrical procedures to generate organically larger forms full of meaning. This was something that composers saw as being a continuation of the act of creation. In the Kabbalah, the book of creation describes how the world was created by permutating the letters of the Hebraic alphabet. And Leibniz also wrote about permutation, and the mathematics of permutation was being worked out in those same times. So there was really this idea, an almost alchemic idea, of taking the smaller possible elements of music and organizing them, rotating them, permutating them so that as to create a more complex work. And none goes so deep in this idea as the Art of Fugue. In Bach's last 10 years of his life, he wrote fewer pieces than in the previous periods. He concentrated mainly on 6 major works, all of which have counterpoint in common, and this idea of a very strict formal style. These works are, of course, the Mass in B minor, the Goldberg variations, the canonic variations, the Art of Fugue, the musical offering, and the second volume of the Well-Tempered Clavier. They are all masterpieces of incredible depth, and each of one seems to bring its genre, its form to the highest point possible. 4 of these, the Art of Fugue, the Goldberg variations, canonic variations, and musical offering, have also in common the idea of generating a very large structure from a single theme. And this is what happens with the Art of Fugue. Let me just play the theme of the Art of Fugue once, so that you have it clearly in your ears. it is a very simple theme. The beginning has almost a call, almost like a prayer already, with the fifth. And then a scale, and a little coda. The fact that it is so simple and so completely rooted in the key of D minor is essential for the possibilities of counterpoint that it offers later, because being simple makes it easier to manipulate it in infinitely complex ways. The Art of Fugue itself is a large work. My performance is about 90 minutes long. Others are a bit shorter, others are a bit longer, but it is a lot of music, 14 different fugues and 4 canons. It is a large structure that brings us from the most simple types of fugues, which have a more abstract nature and somehow more peaceful, and slowly it gets more and more complex and expressive in ways that if you have time to listen to it, I'm sure you will find incredibly moving and surprising. It is, I believe, not just an abstract piece, not just some intellectual construction, or as some people have said, a work not even meant to be played. It is deeply heartfelt music, which represents Bach's attempt to find meaning in his life. And this is how I try to play it, as a completely heartfelt piece, using all the colors and the possibilities that a modern piano can give me, or at least that I'm able to find in it. And with a kind of simplicity and rigor that lets the music say what it must, without adding anything. But while studying it, I found constantly that the more I tried to add, the less effective and more artificial it sounded. And the more I just trusted the music with its message, the more it gave. Each time I play, this piece feels like a mystical odyssey. Really, we start from a very simple place and we reach, I don't want to say the heavens, but surely we reach a very deep place in our heart. There is a feeling of peace to be obtained from this music, a feeling of meaningfulness, like everything finally makes sense. And by the time I reach the final counterpoint with the final tragic silence where the counterpoint is not finished because of Bach's early death, that point is always a blow. It's a silence that sounds really like a tragedy of 250 years ago that muted a voice that we all needed so much to hear. And I don't try to complete this final counterpoint, but rather to just break it off where Bach's hand stopped writing. It's always a deep emotional experience to play this or to listen to this, and something that I think in some ways kept me alive during the months of lockdown, when I was every day going to my piano and playing this music. And I hope it's music that can bring peace and consolation to everyone who listens. The challenges in playing it are big, definitely. It's a long work, and I was quite stubborn in deciding to memorize it, because even though it's very difficult to do so, I noticed immediately that when playing a counterpoint from memory, I would be much more personally engaged with it and have more care to the sound, to how I'm playing it, rather than just following a score. That was a challenge, but the biggest one was trying to find a structure for it, an interpretation for it, meaning the choices of tempi. There are no indications of dynamic, of color, of tempo in any of the counterpoints, since they are not written for piano. It's actually, when you look at the score, a very empty score with just the bare essential notes that make up the work. And to play it means taking choices. And I tried at the beginning to give the sense of a stable tempo actually throughout the whole piece, rather than, as many have done before, looking for as much variation as possible between each single fugue. Because, again, I felt that by trusting the music, and the way it's written does not immediately invoke the idea that one counterpoint should be faster or slower than the others. So I tried to stick to a basic tempo, and then decided my sound and my phrasings and my colors are around that idea. And finally, I had the feeling that it was a long stretch going from the first to the last fugue, rather than a series of 14 different fugues and 4 canons. And that was when I felt like I had made my major step in being able to play this for an audience. I hope that people listening to my interpretation may discover this work in perhaps a new way. Certainly, there haven't been many interpretations, especially for piano, of this work. I feel like the history of its interpretation still has to be written. And my approach, I don't know if it's right or wrong. At the very least, it was very sincere, very meditated, and as informed as I am able to. And this music means a lot to me. I've worked on it for years. I've been focused solely on it for the past months. I hope some of that love can reach audiences. This is a piece that hasn't received enough love and affection. It's been seen as a very abstract construction, something difficult for audiences to enjoy, something, again, that even perhaps should not be played but only studied. And I think by playing it in a very heartfelt way, people hopefully will be able to feel it in their hearts as well. Let's look a little bit more in detail at this piece. So as I said, the structure is made of 14 fugues called counterpoints and 4 canons. They are divided into 4 chapters, if we want to call them chapters, 4 sections which have different principles to their construction. The first one, which goes from the first to the 4th counterpoint, is made of simple fugues with just one subject. And for example, number 1 is the perfect example I would give to anyone if they want to understand what a fugue is. For those who might not know clearly what it is, a fugue is a form of music in which one leading subject, one leading melody, which is the one I played before, the theme of the Art of Fugue in this case, is played in succession in the various voices. So in this case, it's a 4-part composition, and you will hear how the subject changes in key, in pitch, but you can follow it with your ears from one voice to the others. And this, is laid out in the whole composition to create an incredibly expressive incredibly expressive piece of music. So a fugue is like weaving 4 different threads into one beautiful organic picture. And if you follow, you will hear the theme reoccurring in every single voice throughout the piece. see how it always begins from one voice in a very abstract way, by letting you hear the subject, by stating the subject, and then more and more voices come in and weave this picture. The first counterpoint is exceptionally elegant and simple. It really features only one subject, and it's the most simple kind of fugue that you can achieve. And the next counterpoint, number 2, shows the principle of how, by slightly altering the subject in only the coda, you can generate a completely different character already. So the second counterpoint uses a French rhythm, a dotted rhythm, in the coda of the subject to give a much more lively feeling because of the rhythmical subdivisions. And so on. And these first 2 counterpoints form a unity, and the next 2 use another principle, which is the principle of inversion, which is a principle of symmetry. So you've heard the main subject already. It can be completely inverted in its symmetrical form and used to build new fugues on. So the inverted form sounds like this. Counterpoint 4 goes like this. So counterpoints number 3 and 4 are, again, simple fugues based on only one subject, which is the inverted form of the main subject. And this principle of symmetry, you will see, is reoccurring throughout this work. The second big chapter of counterpoints, which goes from number 5 to number 7, adds yet 2 more principles of complexity. One, which appears already in number 5, is the counterfugue, meaning a fugue in which you use at the same time the subject and its inverted form. So in numbers 1 to 4, we only had either the forma recta, the straight form, or the inverted one. In number 5, suddenly we see how they can be merged together in something like this. And this opens up many more possibilities for the fugue. You have heard that this subject is actually a little different from what we heard in the first counterpoints. It is a variant. It's, in particular, a variant made of 14 notes. And this is important because number 14 for Bach was very important. If you associate each letter of the alphabet with its number, so A is 1, B is 2, and so on, the name Bach becomes 2, 1, 3, and 2, 1, 3, and 8. Yeah. The name Bach becomes 2, 1, 3, and 8, and the sum of these digits is 14. And the sum of the digits of J, S, Bach is 41. This, for him, had a particular significance, as you can see from the fact that this piece is written in 14 counterpoints. And in this counterpoint, we encounter this 14-note variant of the theme. So instead of being and there is also another little game with this counterpoint, which I found extremely satisfying when I learned about it. If you look in the manuscript of this counterpoint, it is written on 2 vertical pages, but with the staves, the lines for the music, written in one stroke. And bar number 41 of the counterpoint, which is also the 14th coming from the end of the page, is bar 14 if you look at the whole thing as a single horizontal large sheet of music. It is a bar made of 14 notes and which contains, hidden in the bass, the theme Bach, which will be important in the last fugue, which is. And this foreshadowing of the theme that will conclude the work, or rather where the work remains unfinished, is extremely interesting. And since this could not be maintained in the print edition, he signaled somehow that something strange was hidden in these pages with a spelling mistake, writing contrapunctur instead of contrapunctus, in a way that the digits of each of these letters summed with the number of the page and of the counterpoint gave 196, which is the square of 14. And this, to me, I also love mathematics, and it was an extremely cerebral thing to see, and I must say I rather enjoyed it. Anyway, it's not just fun, it's evident throughout Bach's works that numbers had particular meaning, and it's something that was rooted in the culture of the time. Numbers and letters were not just things, they had all a particular significance. And to him, the idea of hiding layers and layers of meaning and secret in his work was particularly important. In some way, it was necessary for him to add these things to condense even more meaning into his compositions. And while we may not share this kind of mindset and may find it a bit strange, it was certainly something that Bach was very much interested in. Well, there is a kind of double, it is a play in numbers and letters, and certainly Bach enjoyed this kind of game, but it also has a symbol behind it, which is deep. Nothing in these works is left to chance or is completely lighthearted or fickle in nature. Anyway, this counterpoint is extremely beautiful and relaxed, and is followed instead by the counterpoint number 6 in stilo francese, which has a much more accented rhythm and employs for the first time diminution, which means using the subject at a different speed than we've heard, in this case, faster. So it begins something like this. And this also adds, completely different character and a lot of new possibilities for counterpoint. And up to here, and including now number 7, which uses the theme also at a slower speed, everything has been constructed really with only one subject. And to be able to generate so many different characters and compositions from a single theme of music is already an achievement in fantasy of composition in itself. Just to give you an idea of number 7, where 3 different speeds are used, let me play a little bit. played until here because this is when the exposition of the slowest theme in the bass. And so on. That was where it ended. And this counterpoint is really like a sophisticated piece of marquetry, where pieces of different size but that are really the same shape are stuck together, forming a perfect puzzle. And it's also an extremely moving piece of music to me. With number 7, the first half of the work it closes, And before we move to the next, let me spend a couple of words on the canons. So a canon is a different type of counterpoint, where there is one leading voice and the other voice just follows, repeating exactly what the first one has done. And it can do so in the same key or in a different key, but basically one voice generates the whole composition. To give you an example, just the most simple canon in the Art of Fugue, which is also based on the main subject, is the canon all'ottava, which is something like this. And so on. It is an extremely lively piece of music, and there are 4 canons using different principles. One is this, all'ottava, one has a pitch shift to the 10th and one to the 12th, and one, which is my favorite among the canons, is the canon per augmentationem et in contrario motu. What this means is that one voice leads and the other one will follow with the same, but in inversion and slower. So to give you an idea, it's a piece of music that to me feels very intimate, somehow very alien, very bare and essential in being in 2-part and with very strange harmonies. And I really, really like it. And so one problem when deciding how to perform the Art of Fugue is where to place the canons, because there is no definitive answer, and every possibility is at least a little bit mistaken. What I do is, rather than playing them all together, I play one of them at each end of a chapter, so in important formal places. So after the first 4 counterpoints, I insert the canon all'ottava, and then move on to the second group. And after the second group, I play this canon per augmentationem, and so on after counterpoint 11 and then after counterpoint 13. And this helps, I think, give some variation, and also since the canons are rather lighter and easier, I think, to listen to, they offer some rest to the minds also of who is listening. They create a good balance on the overall structure. Let's go back to the next chapter of counterpoints, which goes from number 8 to 11. The principle here is fugues with more than one subject. So up to now, everything has been constructed only with the main subject of the Art of Fugue, but from this point onwards, in these fugues, he uses more than one subject. For example, number 8 and 11 are triple fugues with 3 subjects, And the subjects are actually the same in both these counterpoints, just the inverted forms of each other. So the three subjects in counterpoint 8 are this one, the first one, and the whole first section of the fugue is based only on this very chromatic, very expressive subject. Then a new one is inserted, which has some repeated notes. So it goes, first section ends here. Then the two subjects get together. And finally, at a certain point, we reach, again, the main subject. And in this counterpoint and in number 11, it's in what is called hocetus form, which means hiccups, because it has this quality of almost of a pause, a break in the middle, which gives the sense of crying, of plight. Just to play it once, as it is in the beginning of number 11. Counterpoints 8 and 11 are the two longest ones, together with the final fugue. And in some ways, they reach levels of tension and expressivity that are quite astounding. How complicated the harmony is inside is always quite something to admire. And I would like to play a bit from the final section of counterpoint 11, just to give you an idea of how intense this music can become. This is just one page out of 6 of this counterpoint. And you see how combining these three subjects gives birth to a completely new level of expressivity and such a poignant way of writing, completely remote from the more abstract landscapes of the first counterpoint. You remember. at this point, this feels like a distant memory, because in our voyage, we have progressed a lot. In the middle, between counterpoints 8 and 11, 9 and 10 are somewhat smaller, both in size and in how much impact they make, I think. Number 9 is more virtuosic. It is the only counterpoint in the series that really has a very flourished nature. I played until here so you could hear the entrance of the main subject. So how it is combined now with a much more, with a subject full of notes. Number 10 is a much more abstract counterpoint, and the other subject besides the main one is this. And this set of 4 counterpoints is one of the more expressive chapters and the more heartfelt, I think, in the composition. The next set of counterpoints, number 12 and 13 are mirror fugues. What this means, I would like to show you on the score. First, he writes a counterpoint, and then he just writes down the complete mirror image of it. So we heard before the inverted form of the main theme, but imagine applying that principle of symmetry to a whole composition, and not only making it a piece that works, but a masterpiece, an incredibly moving counterpoint. That is what Bach had achieved. The effect of doing an inversion in music is not like making a symmetrical picture. It's more similar to making a color negative of a picture. So to be able to paint a picture that is an incredible painting, and when you invert it in color, seems like a different, completely different, but also incredible masterpiece painting. This is something very cerebral, and that Bach achieves with such mastery that we wouldn't be able to tell if we only had one fugue that it's invertible. And this is, something that always impressed me. But what impressed me even more when I started studying this is realizing that the 2 mirror fugues are dance forms. And this was very interesting for me, because the idea that Bach's music is completely abstract or only intellectual, I think it's a danger, especially because it risks to get people more far away from it. And instead here, where the construction, where the principle of composition is at its most, if you want, abstract, the form is the most practical. Number 12 is a saraband, a slow and expressive dance, and number 13 is a jig. To give you an idea, this is the beginning of number 12 in the forma recta. And let me play just the same number of bars from the forma inversa, so the complete symmetrical mirror image of this piece. You can see, if I hadn't told you that they are perfect mirror images, I don't think any one of us could have guessed. Of course, we notice a similarity, but the fact that neither one of these forms feel, like just a gimmick, like a construction that somehow works, but it feels completely natural. This is the master craftsmanship that Bach had, the full control he had of these techniques. And this fugue gets to a point that it's so expressive. And so on until the end. And in both forms, it is such a moving piece, perfectly balanced with the following jig, which is instead an extremely lively piece. And I will play just the beginning to give you an idea. Or its mirror image. And so on. So these two counterpoints, this unity between a very practical and expressive form and cerebral construction is, I think, embodies perfectly what the art of fugue is for me. Not only, at the very least, a piece of geometry, a piece that is intellectual or some kind of treatise on how to write fugues, but also a very practical, a very expressive, just a very beautiful music. The last fugue is the subject of many mysteries and questions. It is unfinished. There is a note on the manuscript by the son of one of the sons of Bach, Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, that says where the counter subject with the theme Bach B flat, A, C, B natural, appears. Unfortunately, the composer passed away. And why this fugue is not finished and what to do about it is one of the biggest questions when tackling this piece. Bach had been suffering from his eyesight was worsening, and also his ability to write and use his right hand, including writing music, of course, were getting worse. And at some point, he had surgery from a renowned but somewhat sketchy surgeon, John Taylor, and this didn't help him. And subsequently, at one point, he suffered also a stroke and passed away more suddenly, probably, than people expected. But the truth is, this fugue was meant in its original design to be the summary of all of the principles that we have seen until now. So it was to contain more than one subject, in fact, 4. And in the various sections, it had to have counterfugues. It had to have the last section with 4 subjects, where the main subject of the Art of Fugue was supposed to return. This section was supposed to embody in it also the principles of a canon form and of an invertible mirror fugue. And when a composer writes a piece like this, surely the first section that he needs to work out is the most complex one. In this case, the last one, with the 4 subjects and all of these features. So it's quite hard to think that Bach hadn't at least worked it out in his head or on a separate sheet of paper that then got lost. The questions are plenty. Some people even think that Bach left this unfinished so that us, the following generations of musicians, would try to complete this and each write his own ending to the Art of Fugue. It is a moment of mystery. When we reach this silence at the end, we do feel this sense of tragedy, of injustice, that it's such a composition which Bach worked on for many years, for over a decade probably, couldn't come to its designed ending. And personally, I decided, as many others do, to just leave the sudden silence, and each listener will make of this silence what they feel, the meaning that they feel appropriate. This fugue is incredibly expressive. Its structure is based on the Book of Revelations, which was a very important source for Bach's imagery and for structures and of text for his cantatas. It is the single most quoted book from the scriptures in his cantatas. In the Book of Revelations, the number 7, and the number 7 is very important, as well as the principle of, again, symmetry. And the first subject of this fugue is a subject of 7 notes and perfectly symmetrical. So starting and ending with the same note and having symmetrical notes in the middle. And it goes something like this. And so on. There are 4 pages of this very quiet, very mostly peaceful first subject, which are incredibly solemn, and they announce that this is the last composition. It is, I said that this is based on the Book of Revelations, but really the complete Art of Fugue in its numbers is based on that. It's 2 halves of 7 and 7 counterpoints. And this one, if you count the entries of the subject, every time there is a 7th entry, something special happens. And there is a lot of hidden symbology that I cannot go into with depth right now. But it helps, I think, in imagining a scenario for this composition. Something like the world is over and the pianist or organist or harpsichord player is the only one left, and this is his final prayer or something. This composition has all to do with the final words. It is the last composition by Bach. It is also unfinished, truncated. It's a very special piece. The second section has a different subject which gives more movement and more turbulence. And the third section, which is the last one we have, left broken just before the beginning of what was supposed to be the fourth section and the big conclusion to this huge work. I would like to play whole. It introduces the theme Bach, which again is. And you will hear how the last page is already very ambiguous and enigmatic and powerful in its harmonies, and how somehow the silence and it not being finished, I think it makes it even more dramatic and effective than if it were a complete work in a mysterious way. Let me just play the ending. Bach, in the musical offering, wrote on a canon, querendo invenietis, which means seek and you shall find. There is a sense in Bach's music, especially in his later works, of opening up so many questions and mysteries, but that have so much to do with our lives. And for us musicians, this is, I think, what we are looking for in music, for questions about the world, about the life, about meaning. And Bach invites us specifically to search, to seek. My project aims to be my way of exploring his work and the society I live in, the art, the culture, the research that people I admire who came before me have done. I hope you will be able to follow the next developments of this as we go deeper into this work and hopefully together with myself learn more about our present.